All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to our Women's Summit. Thank you for being here. It is my pleasure today to introduce you to Elena King. You've probably heard her name before. If you haven't, you're in for a real treat today. Elena works out at Common Ground Golf Course, but owns Experience Golf, which is her instruction academy. I'm sure she would love to give you more information about that later today. But for now, you have a bio in your packet that has all of her accolades. You don't want to listen to me, you're here to listen to her, so please welcome Elena King.
Thank you, Ashley. Good morning. Looks like I got about 50 warriors out here, huh? All right, raise your hand in general if you are a warrior. Okay, I got a couple, most everybody, a couple of so-sos. There we go. And how about spring's right around the corner, isn't it? I'm starting to think about golf. Who's starting to wonder who's gonna show up on the team? Yeah, we all do that worrying, don't we? There we go. So we are here today. We are gonna talk about why do we worry? Why is that the case? What are we saying to each other? How does worry impact our performance? Does anybody think it has an influence on our performance? Absolutely, right? And we're gonna learn what happens in our body when we worry. And then I'm gonna give you a couple of strategies to manage it today. So to start this off right away, I can use myself as an example. What was I worried about? Was I ready? How many people are gonna be here? Do they think I'm short? We all have our own stuff that we continue to worry about. And so those are the things that are really normal. So what I'm gonna do is start this off with an exercise. In your packet, you should have 3 golf tees. So if you would be kind enough to pull those 3 tees out of your packet, and I'm gonna give you an exercise to do. Oh. The golf bag, I'm sorry, golf bag. The bag. Everybody got their 3 tees getting there? So what we are gonna do today, we are gonna put those 3 tees in your right hand. And you are gonna introduce yourself to your neighbor and say, good morning. Good morning, neighbor. What I would like you to do is use your imagery, your visualization to either a past experience or one that could potentially be coming up that you're playing in a member guest and it's really important to you. You don't want to embarrass yourself in front of your guests. You might be playing in your club championship. You may be playing in one of the CGA championships or even a USGA qualifier here. So I want you to put yourselves there. You've just finished your warm-up, whether it's on the driving range or the putting green, and you are walking to the first tee. Can you guys put yourself there? Yeah. Got that feeling? What I want you to do is with your partner, take a few minutes and you are gonna talk through some of the things that come in your mind. And then what I'd like you to do is have the other person say it back to you. Now, every time you have these three T's in your hand, in your right hand, that it's a negative or a fearful thought, you're gonna move one of those T's over to your left hand. Anybody need more T's? Okay, I'm gonna give you a few minutes to do that with your partner. Go ahead.
It can be a triple. It can be a triple.
You can be a triple.
You're okay.
And Betsy.
Wait.
Neither of us. I played Liverpool Live at Commons. Okay, so what's your first team? Going to the left. Little pen first team. So you would. Yeah, I like to see there, like a town, what I start. We will rock it. Yeah, right. Game, you walk around.
One more minute and then we'll talk about this.
Time with yourself to evaluate. Are you here with other people? But I do want to.
Okay. Everybody have a chance to discuss this a little bit?
Yeah, snowbirds. Yeah, I got it.
Who got to keep all three of their T's in the right hand? Anyone? All right, I love that. Who needed more T's? Lots of you. So worry is the anticipation of a negative event. It creates doubt, it creates fear, creates anxiety, tension. So anybody want to just holler out a couple of things that went through your mind? I heard a couple of things over here. I wasn't ready. I might be late. What else is going on?
I'm the shortest hitter in the group.
I'm the shortest hitter in the group. I got that one. What is it?
Shanking the ball.
I might shank the ball.
I was great on the range. Why is it not translating?
Great on the range. Why can't I take it to the course? So what happens in between the range and the first tee? We get a lot of chatter, don't we? There's a lot of mean people talking in our head. So I have to tell you a story because I think it's very relevant. I just flew in from Palm Springs yesterday. I'm invited down every year to a pro-am down at Marrakesh Country Club with some of my few year ago tour playing players, the friends that I have, and they invite me down. And it's the likes of a couple of Hall of Famers are in this field. We got Amy Alcott, I got Sandra Palmer's there, Patty Sheehan is there, Sherry Steinhauer, a lot of ex-tour players. So the chatter already starts. So I'm staying with a friend And the chatter starts the night before. Oh, this is her. She said I was okay to use her as an example. Chatter start, oh, I just want to play well. What's the most thing that goes to our mind is I don't want to embarrass myself. We all get that? Yeah, absolutely. So she's already starting to get a little nervous in anticipation of this future event. So we're leaving in the morning, we're ready. She's talking about it a lot. Gosh, I hope I play well. I just want to play well. I just want to play well is an outcome, isn't it? So we're getting ready to leave. And I'm in the garage. I'm like, God, what is going on in there? What is she doing? Waiting. And then I start worrying. I'm like, oh, something might be happening in it. Anyway, she finally comes out laughing hysterically. And she's like, clean up on aisle 3. Well, guess what happened to her? She got so nervous. She had an accident. So this is what happens in our body when our self-talk gets so wound up, right? We are so wound up that it actually has a physiological reaction in our body. Now, I am not a neurologist, so there's a lot of information here and I don't expect you to read it. But I wanted to put it up there so I didn't misquote it because that is not my expertise. But what happens is I start to have a lot of negative talk. It creates anxiety. So my heart starts pumping faster, right? My breathing gets more shallow. We are wired for this, right? It's our fight or flight response. This is a good thing that we have. But when we send a stress message or a threat message to our brain, our voices are sending it to our brain, our heart starts pumping, it affects our visual acuity, it affects our decision making. We can no longer make good decisions because our body is releasing cortisol. And when our cortisol levels get too high, I make really bad decisions. I go too quickly. I get quick, my grip pressure gets tight. Actually get goosebumps, we get dry. Our glucose levels go into our intestines. We get butterflies. So this all is a physiological reaction. Now, guess what happens? I show up to the first tee, I hit a horrible golf shot, and I go, oh, my golf swing stinks. Did my golf swing change? Did my skill level change from walking from the range where I was just said the range to the golf course? It didn't change. But what happened is things in my body changed. So that's where I go back to this story, and it's a true life story of what happens is that we get so nervous because what are we worried about? We're worried about being embarrassed. We're worried about not playing well. But I have to say, as a golfer, nobody's paying attention to what you're doing, right?
You don't care.
We don't care because what are we worried about? I'm so busy worried about that I don't screw it up or I'm doing something else. So I really want you to be thinking about and understanding how important it is to manage what you're saying to each other. Now, easier said than done, of course, and it is a skill, but it is good to know that this is actual science. That's what's happening in your body. So stress consequences. Again, like I said, it affects your decision-making, it affects your visual acuity, and your fine motor skills. So when we have all that chatter, we wonder why we shake over a shortcut that we really need to make. Yeah, it's actually happening in my body. So guess what? My friend shows up to the tee looking like this. So why does this happen? Does that look familiar? Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? But this all is derived from what we're saying to ourselves. Why does this happen? So one of the things that I use a lot, and I hope that you will like this, is that it's the stories in our head. What am I telling myself? And this is under our control. So I use this diagram numerous times, and I think it's really powerful. So there are facts, right? The fact is a fact. It's the story that we tell ourselves that can either create a negative response, or what we would prefer would at least be a neutral or positive response. So I'm gonna just use an example. So we're on the golf course and Susie, while I'm hitting my tee shot, I hope there's not a Susie in here. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Susie's over there talking, laughing, having a great old time. I hit my tee shot and I hit it in the poo. Well, now what do? What's my story? Susie did that. She's so mean, I can't, it's her fault I hit it in the poo, right? So now what happens? I got that story in my head. I either get angry, I get frustrated, I could get disappointed, and guess what's gonna happen? All that's gonna show up in my next shot. So my next shot is gonna be affected by what I'm saying to myself. Now, the positive story could be, Susie didn't even know I was hitting, did she? It's a beautiful day, she's having a great time. How different is that story in our head? It's a very simplified example, but it is very, very different on now how I respond or I react. Another example would be, I'm over the ball, I hit a 6-foot putt and I miss it. Ah, I stink at putting, I never make a putt, right? Who does that? Right. So negative reaction. Of course, then I would say to you as your coach, what percent of 6-foot putts are we really gonna make? So we have to be realistic with our expectations. But if I think that I'm gonna make every 6-foot putt and I have a negative reaction, now I have that created and it festers in us, right? It keeps going and it's going. But a different reaction could be, I hit a really good putt, it didn't go in. Or it could be factual, I misread the putt, or I didn't have the right speed. So now I have a very neutral reaction. We all see in the difference in how that can make and how we can react and respond. And now that you're smart enough to know the science behind it and what it does to your body, I really want you to consider this when you start putting stories in your head. So the next slide, I want you just to tell me what you see right off the bat first. Raise your hand if you saw the duck first. Okay, raise your hand if you saw the rabbit first. Okay, doesn't matter which. Point being is you cannot hold the same thought or image in your mind at the same time. So you can go, I want to see a duck. Everybody see a duck? I want to see the squirrel. Everybody sees a squirrel. You cannot do both. So point being here, you have a choice when we go back to our fact and our story of what you want to choose. Do we believe that? This is absolutely under our control and so important, the stories that you're going to choose to have in your mind, now that you know how it affects you, to take into your next shot. Or if we're in a relationship, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna do? Those kinds of things can make a big difference. So part of the incentive for me to give this speech today, when Erin asked me to do it, I was actually reading this book by Dr. Michael Gervais. Really cool guy. I heard him speak at a TPI conference, Titleist Performance Institute, years ago. He has a great podcast called Finding Mastery, if you're podcast listeners too. So what Dr. Michael Gervais does is he interviews and talks with people who are at the top of their game, and he tries to unpack what allows people to perform at their best. Really cool guy, and reading this book was, he said, super interesting to me, and I hope that you will find it interesting as well if you choose to pick this up. But I did want to give him credit for a lot of the things that I am talking about today. So you all have heard about FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. Dr. Michael Gervais, he coined FOPO. Anybody ever heard of FOPO? The fear of other people's opinion, right? We are wired animals socialized for acceptance, to be liked. But we spend a lot of our time aiming to please, worrying about other people's opinion. And I think it's really an interesting concept and how much this affects us on the golf course as well. Because what's the number one thing that we talked about? That people are in fear of being embarrassed. See a lot of you going like, oh, that's kind of making sense, isn't it? So when we give more value to people's opinions than our own, we're living life on their terms, not our own. Make sense? I'm gonna let you read that for a second. So instead of focusing on our own feelings, we obsess about others' opinions and it affects our decision making. You guys are all agreeing to this. Yeah, there's a little bit of this to everyone, right? We want to be liked, we want to please, we want to be accepted. And one of the things that as a golf coach over all these years that I hear is I don't want to embarrass myself. Because we're worried about others, people's opinion, and then how does that affect us, right? Now it's sending that stress to our brain, that threat, that fear. Now I'm going to cause all that physiological reaction again, and guess where it shows up? In my putting stroke, or I swing too fast on the first tee. So all of these things impede our ability to perform at our best. So we carry this around. That's a pretty big load to be carrying around, isn't it? All the familiar thoughts that go through our head. So this is normal, right? We want to normalize this so at least you're aware of it. It's not like there's something wrong with you. I said I had those same thoughts before I even walked on stage, right? Like, oh, I wonder if I wore the right thing. But I do have to go to work. But all these things we're carrying around, and that's a pretty heavy load, isn't it? So next exercise, there should be a pad of paper or pencil in your bag. You can grab a new partner or whoever's next to you. We're going to do this again. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have you draw one big circle. And you are going to write in that circle things that are out of your control. And this can be related to golf or to life or to relationships or work, whatever is on your mind at the moment or is important to you or resonating with you. Doesn't have to be golf. What is out of your control in this big circle, and then you're going to draw another circle in the middle. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. And I want you to be thinking about what is actually 100% within your control. Just give you a couple more seconds here to finish up. Alrighty. Anybody want to throw out some things that they came up with that are out of our control?
Someone who self-criticizes after every shot of theirs. You're playing with them, and that's what you're doing. That's the one thing that just drives me mad.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat this in case you did not hear it in the back. She is saying that what drives her mad on the golf course is someone who self-criticizes after every golf shot on the golf course. That's really a good one. And that is completely out of our control, isn't it? But we let it eat at us, don't we? What else we got?
Course condition.
Yeah.
Course conditions. Barb? Weather, pairings, traffic.
Girl.
Cart girl? Pace of play.
Wow.
Excellent, excellent. What did we come up with that is under our control? 100%. Attitude, reaction.
My prep before.
You guys are good. You should be given this speech. I love it.
What I say to others.
What you say to others, excellent. So yes. So what we do is we go, okay, playing, our playing partners, the weather, other people's opinions, the past. We all dwell on that sometimes, don't we? Oh, last time I was here, I did this. The future, uh-oh, there's that water. Every time I'm on this hole, how other people feel. A lot of us take that on, don't we? Course conditions we talked about, other people's actions, winning. Can we control winning?
No.
No, it's an outcome, isn't it? We can control our process. 100% under control, our thoughts, our words, our actions, our attitudes. Really powerful stuff when we're on the golf course of what is actually under our control. And what happens is when we focus on what is out of our control, it limits our full potential. Because we are spending a lot of energy and time worrying about maybe other people's opinions and other things that we can't control. And when we're on the golf course, we do spend a lot of time worrying about what other people are doing. And pace of play is a big one, right? So what do? Uh-oh, we're playing slow. I better go rush my shots. Right? I'm gonna make up for everybody else. And I'm gonna go swing fast. So 100% out of our control. So next concept that I want you to be thinking about is, which is really important and maybe something you have or not considered yet, is where do we hang our self-worth at? What did that mean to us? That we make judgments on ourselves only in the areas where we hang our self-worth at. We have difficulty making decisions if we look for answers outside of ourselves. So, for example, what I'm gonna have you do is just take a few minutes and look at the list that I'm gonna put up. And there's not a right or wrong. It may be a couple of them. But I want you just to look at these and go, which ones resonate for me personally? Anybody want to share? You don't have to. I'm just curious if something jumped out at somebody. What's that?
Number one is a difficult one because
The social
I
approval?
wanna be part of the group, I wanna be accepted, I wanna be validated by the group.
Yeah, that's so great, and
Always,
thank you
and
for sharing.
That's the biggest one that's a big one for me.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. I think that's really great and courageous of you to jump out there and say that. Social approval, right? But we're wired this way. We're wired for acceptance and approval. So why this list or why this exercise is important is just if you can understand where you hang your self-worth hat or what's important to you, it'll help you understand why, if a threat arises in this one of these particular areas, why you respond the way you do. So it's just more of an awareness piece, and it's something I've actually never really given much thought to. But when I looked up there and I was like, oh, that one struck home for me. But now if I react to a certain situation and I understand this, it might make it a lot easier for me. So awareness of all of this is just one of the important things that I would like for you to take away today. Just being aware of what you're saying to yourself, being aware of what's in your control, and having a little bit of foundation here of how am I wired to help me respond and react differently. So it starts at a very young age, doesn't it? Social media now for young kids, we carry a lot around with us, worrying about those kinds of things, or what's out of our control, what's someone thinking of me, and the fear of other people's opinion. We're gonna give you another exercise here, and this one you're gonna do by yourself. And some of you are familiar with Brene Brown. Raise your hand for Brene Brown. She had the TED Talk that was in the top 5 most viewed ever, and about vulnerability. And she does this exercise. So you're gonna, on a piece of paper, and I want it to only be about 1 inch by 1 inch, you don't have to tear it off. And you are going to write down the initials on this very small 1 by 1 inch square of the people in your life that opinions matter most to you. Was this an easy exercise or a difficult one? It's easy, isn't it? When we look at this, we go, really, whose opinion really matters to us? Right? And we worry about so much. So I want you to ask yourself, why did you include these people? And this is something you can do later at home or think about. Are you surprised by anyone that you put in your box? Surprised at anybody that didn't make your box? But when you walk away and you think about this again, and hopefully you will, whose opinion really matters? And I'm gonna read you a quote because I can't memorize it. And this is from Brene Brown. Our job becomes to get specific on whose opinions matter and find the people who love you, not despite of your vulnerability, not despite of your imperfection, but because of it. So we want to pay attention to the people's opinions who matter. But when we get all wound up about all this other stuff, it's really costing us a lot when it comes to our energy, our performance, our longevity. The cortisol that we were talking about earlier that gets released in our body has long-term effects. I've seen studies on stress, how it affects us. So, in contrast to that, the opinions of others, the people who easily throw the insults and the comments from the cheap seats, do they matter to us? No, they're really not that important in our lives. So today we were talking about awareness of our self-talk, right? Things that I want you to be thinking about. And this is just the 30,000-foot view. This goes much deeper. But really, what is the story that we're telling ourselves? How we can manage it. The first thing that we can do is we can breathe, right? Breathing, focusing on our breathing brings us right back to the present moment. Being present is so important. All the studies show people perform at their best when they're the most present and focused. Things you can do to get present. And another thing is just our emotional state is trying to change from a state of joy and gratitude. So I'm gonna go back to my story with my friend. We're laughing, we get in the car, and of course I've got this presentation coming up, so I've got all this information in my head and it's top of my mind. And I said, if you could switch what you're thinking right now and choose to think something different as we're driving west of Palm Springs, the mountains are beautiful, snow-capped, gorgeous. And I said, what would you really want to get out of today if we took away the score, or you not, being embarrassed, all that? And she stopped as she's driving and I could see her pondering. And she said, I want my ladies to have a really great time today. And I thought that is so cool. Now she changed her focus to being in a state of joy and gratitude versus focusing on being embarrassed and I hope I play well and all of that. So I wanted to tie that all together because I think it's really important to know that we can change mentally what we say, which changes our emotions, which changes how we are physiologically. So that's the one thing we're talking about. And then fear of other people's opinion. This is a big one, I think, as well, that we do make choices based on our own purpose, not someone else's. And then the last thing that we talked about is focusing under what's under your control. So before I go, I want you to just to consider one more concept, and I'm gonna show you a video. You know why I wore the Iowa shirt, huh? We got some basketball fans in here? We got some Hawkeyes, I love that.
Got some buffs in here, okay?
All right, they're good too, they're good too.
Represent.
Uh-oh. My sound, the sound is not on.
But Indiana beat them.
Who said that? So why did I show you that video? Is it just because I'm a crazy Hawkeye fan? Probably.
Yeah.
But why did I show you that video? Caitlin Clark had a shot clock, didn't she? She had a shot clock. She knew she had to shoot. So there is a study that was done by, sorry about that. Study is done by Bronnie Ware is her name. The greatest regret of people at the end of their lives was living for the approval of others. They wish they had the courage to pursue the life they desire. So what if you went around that your life had shot clock? How would your choices be different? We all know there's a shot clock, don't we? We just choose to ignore it. We don't know when it's going off. But I would like you to go away with how your self-talk affects that. And whose opinions really matter to you. And make your choices as if that shot clock's going off. And I think maybe your life might work a little differently for you. Thank you for being here today.
I told you she was the best. Sure. Does anyone have any questions? Next up on the agenda is 10 o'clock sessions. Your choices are rules of golf right here, with me and George. Or Golf Genius for the advanced users down in Gates, which is the little room just at the bottom of the stairs. Breakfast and coffee are still available, but in the meantime, burning questions for Elena while we still have her attention. Comments? Yeah.
How did you learn all this?
The question is, how did you learn all this?
How did I learn all this? I read a lot, I study a lot, and I'll just back up a little bit of my story. I've taught golf for a long time. And there was a time when I thought traditional golf lessons were great. Technology is great. It's so wonderful what we know about how the golf swing works. But I kept thinking there's a lot more to golf than just the technique. And the performance side was really fascinating to me. So for years now, I've studied it, gone to seminars, and I just think it's fascinating things, and I just keep rolling with it. So hopefully you've enjoyed it as well, and we're able to take something away
Thank
from
you
it.
for sharing, because again, a lot of us don't realize what our head does to us.
Right.
In terms
And-
of our
yeah.
thoughts and whatever.
And a lot of our coaching, since we've been at Common Ground for the last 14 years, we've tried to take a holistic approach, and Ed sitting there that was kind enough to bring me on 14 years ago. We sat there and we said, how do we make this a little bit different? That it's not just about hitting golf balls. How can we learn about golf, and how can it help us with life? And what are the important things that we will able to convey to people as they come to experience golf at Common Ground?
Well, it's one of the things that about being a leader, is that you want to share the fun of golf and being outdoors in Colorado and being on the earth and where your feet touching the ground. And then that your speech here was exactly what I needed today. And I'm sure it is for everybody else, because we think too much when we're golfing. So.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. That's great. And I hope that that resonates with you as well. Question?
Do you have,
Comment?
positive statements that you say to yourself?
Like affirmations?
Yeah, like when you're up at the shot, do you have a mantra or anything?
I personally don't, because that's not how I roll. I think it's very good for a lot of people to do that. To me, what's more important is, and this will be a much longer discussion, is being present to one thing. Like, can I feel my balance? Can I feel the speed of my tempo? Can I feel my grip pressure? Those are things for me to stay very focused and balanced in swing are what helped me. So the mantra thing doesn't work as well for me personally, but I know for a lot of people it does work. That's a great question.
Do you have other books you would recommend on the mental aspects of
Yeah,
golf?
for sure. I have a whole list of them, but a couple of them, well, Vision 54 is through Lynn Marriott and Pia Nelson, who I've done most of my study under and with. So any of the Vision 54 books are great. Extraordinary Golf by Fred Shoemaker. He has some great things as well. He's really big on the awareness piece. So if that interests you, Fred Shoemaker, Extraordinary Golf is great. And one that's transferring from the driving range to the golf course. Easier Said Than Done by Dr. Rick Jensen. Zen Golf, Dr. Joe Parent. There's a lot of good books out there.
Thank you.
One more.
This is not really a question, but the woman asking about affirmation, one thing I always say to myself, two things. One, no one paid to see me play golf today. Paying me to play golf.
I'm gonna repeat that for those of you that didn't hear it. That's so great. She said, no one is paying to see me play golf, and no one has paid me to play golf. I love that. Is that accurate? That's beautiful. Thank you. That is super. Any other comments, questions for us today? Well, this has been great. Oh, Barb's got a comment.
I just want to say that I found Elena 2 or 3 years ago and have been in her committed players program for 3 years in a row. And she is absolutely the best instructor that you can find in Colorado. She is wonderful. I'm not close to Common Ground. She is worth the traffic headaches. And take lessons from her.
Thank you, Barb. Very nice. Great. You all have a great rest of your day, and thank you for being here. Go Hawks.